this is a really very, very special night for us having Clyde Butcher here. I've been following his work online. I did try to get into the gallery one time when I was down in Florida visiting my dad, but it was the wrong, it didn't work out. The timing just wasn't right. I have a photo friend from Colorado who's been there twice and has been blown away, just as Larry mentioned it, with the spectacular nature of Clyde's gallery in Florida. And I remember back somewhere around 1985 or thereabouts, there was a show at Kutztown University, which is Clyde, about maybe 20 minutes from our clubhouse, a state school. There was a big showing of your work there, these giant images in there. They have a nice art school, and it was just mind-boggling to see that that show. So this is really quite an honor to have you be kind enough to join us. Clyde started photography, I think about 50 years ago. He will give us the timeline, but he started photographing architectural models professionally, and then did some a lot of color photography work that he progressed on to doing picture clocks, which were sold in all the catalogs, the Montgomery Ward, Sears, and Pennies, and that was quite a huge business. Eventually, Clyde moved, stopped photographing actually, and went on a sailboat with his family and did some traveling, and I guess chilled out a little bit and got back into photography in the early 80s and moved into the Big Cypress National Preserve in 1992 with his wife, Nikki, who I had the privilege to meet at the start of tonight. I believe Clyde has slowed down somewhat. His family runs the gallery at Big Cypress in Florida in the Everglades. And I'll pass the baton over to you, Clyde, to give us the story. Thank you so much for doing this for us.
Okay, well, I want to start out. There's maybe you might be interested. There's a big show of my Everglades show in Youngstown, Ohio. It's not that far from you, is it?
About 5 hours, I think.
Well, that's closer than Florida.
Yeah. Excuse me, by the way, if you could all mute your mics and then deal with the questions in the chat room, I'll monitor those and get those over to Clyde. So go ahead, Clyde.
Okay, well, I actually started out probably 70 years ago when I was 8 years old. I started out with a Hawkeye camera, and then this is when I was 10. I bought a twin lens Yashica, and my folks took me to some national parks. You can see how excited my dad is there. He's really enthusiastic about this. But my folks were really great doing things for me, and that's one of my pictures I took. Was not too bad for a 10-year-old. You can see our car there in the parking lot. Now, I want to go through some of the main cameras that I use. This is a 5.7 Deerdorf, which I purchased in 1971 for $100. Now, in 1971, everybody was going to 35 millimeter and 2.25. They were getting rid of their cameras. This was sitting on a shelf with a bunch of dust on it. And I said, do you really want that thing? And they said, no, give me $100 for it. This is in Newport Beach, California, which was kind of fun. So I could print up to probably 7-foot prints with that camera, because I use a T-Max 100. So I can do 7-foot prints with that camera. Then I was with these large cameras. They're awfully heavy. The 8x10 Deerdorf weighs 17 pounds. So what I did, I took a 4x5 Wisner, and I had Ron make a 6x10 back for the Wisner. So it weighs 7.5 pounds. So it was a lot more portable. So as you get older, you're looking for lighter stuff. And the proportion 6 by 10, I think, is almost the perfect proportion for a picture, 6 by 10. And then this is my 8 by 10, which I use most of the time. This is in Costa. It's probably the most universal of all the cameras I use. Now, this is a 11 by 14 made by Richard Ritter in Vermont. It only weighs 15 pounds. My 11 by 14 Deerdorf weighs 45 pounds. So it's not that hard to get it into the swamp. So you have a lot of detail there. You can make a pretty good sized picture. Then this is the stupid camera. I call it, it's just too big. It's 12 by 20. The camera, the lenses, the film holders, the tripod, it's 120 pounds. Now, how much does a Sony weigh?
Probably about 2 pounds.
Yeah. Well, my lenses are heavy though. But I've done digital print with a one shot from 12 by 20, 23 feet long, and you couldn't see the grain. I had to actually scan it at a low resolution, and because it came out 3 gigabytes. Now this will give you an idea of how the camera is being used. It was cold. This is in Mount Whitney in California. The valley there between the White Mountains and the Sierras. Now, so I don't know if you saw the very front part. The front lens was lifted up because I didn't want this much foreground. I wanted more sky. So you have to go out individually. You have to, now I'm having to pick out which filter I want. And of course, I wanted that moon to pop out, so I used a red filter. You can see how it's not quite like shooting a digital camera. I think this was a 4-second exposure because it was very bright that day, that morning. But it's really fun using the camera though. So there's the photograph. And that looks a lot different than the color shot, didn't it? I'm gonna go back so you see the color. Oh, oops, too far. Well, I guess you can't do that, but the color looks pretty bad. It was not very exciting, but in black and white, it really came out great. Now this is kind of a collection of my cameras that I use. 12 by 20 on the very left, 4 by 5 on the right, 6 by 10 in the center, and I have what's called my point and shoot 4 by 5. And then every camera has the same angle of view of lens. They're just different focal lengths. Like the 12 by 20 is 210 millimeters, and that gives me 110 degrees. The 11 by 14 is 150 millimeters. 8 by 10 is 120. 5 by 7 is 72. 4 by 5 is, I usually use 47. So all these lenses are the same focal length. They're just covered, they have different size circles, covers. Now this is my architectural model photography camera. I built this camera. It's the size of a piece of 35 millimeter film. So you put the film, cut the film in the darkroom, put it in this little box, put tape around it, Then you take it into the model and then turn lights on. So this gives you, this is an example of one of the models. You have the model from floor to ceiling is 6 inches. It's a dollar bill. Okay. These little pots out here are about maybe 3/4 of an inch. And of course, we are 3 inches because it's half-inch scale. So all the people are 3 inches. Of course, the position of the people have to be in the correct perspective, make it right. This one, these chairs, the sporting of the chairs, that's a paper clip. And these trees are actually model trees that I built. This whole thing is a stage set. They're not models that you would use in a presentation. It was just done for photography. There's our wheel of people. This was a project in Palo Alto that they wanted this high rise, and the 4 guys in the center there are on the county commission, city commissions, and I gave this presentation. They got so fascinated about this presentation that they passed the project, which they later on were upset about. Now this one here is really bad because I tried to use a more a camera that had more quality. I think it was a Hasselblad super wide, and it has too much quality, so it shows us all the imperfections. So the other models were done with actually with a Flectagon, 20mm Flectagon on an Exacta camera. Then in 1962.
Excuse me, Clyde, a couple questions about those.
Sure.
So all those people, they were all fake. They were all models, or were they cutouts of photographs?
Yeah, I would photograph everybody, photograph all these people in the correct light. And then Nikki, with a Exacta 111 blade, she would cut them out and put a bevel on it so you didn't see the edge of the paper. And each print was perpendicular to the camera. Because so that you understand what I mean? So that so each person was they were as a wire on the bottom, and they stuck in the floor, and they were all turned so they were all perpendicular to the camera, so they were not distorted.
Okay.
Other than the distortion of the wide angle lens.
Right. And there's a question about, with your big cameras, are you exposing film or paper? You're doing film, right?
Oh yeah, I only shoot T-Max 100 because that's the best film.
Kodak film.
Yes, they still make it.
Still produced?
Still make it. Yep. Yep. It's a little more expensive than Ilford, but they still make it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, that was it for now. What size is the film? I guess it depends on if it's a 5x7 camera, it's 5x7.
Correct. Right. 12x20 is 12x20. I had to have 12x20 film made. It was the order for the film was $15,000. It's not a cheap idea.
And do you take only one exposure? You just know it's
No, you at least take 2. Because you don't know when I load the film, is one of my hair is going to fall on the film, dirt. There's all kinds of physical problems you can have with the film. So I at least shoot 2. So every time I load the film, each film holder has 2 shots. So I consider that one shot. I shoot one side, flip it over, shoot the other side. And then of course there's areas that there's one area, well, I'll get to that later.
okay. Good.
So in 1962, I was dating my wife, and her family visited Yosemite in the summer, and I visited dating here up there and saw Ansel Adams' work and said, well, that's kind of interesting. You know, I thought you take photographs of trees so you sell the tree, not the picture. Because photography was for selling stuff. It wasn't for art. Whoever heard of that? I don't know how old you guys are, but back in the 60s, art it was starting to, well, Moonrise over Hernandez, 16 by 20 print was $75. If you could pick up one for $75 today, I think I would do it. I saw one the other day for, I think it was 100,000. So anyhow, I started taking photographs, and mostly in black and white. And I found a friend that I met in an art show. I was doing art shows when I was in architecture, and met a friend, and he was he liked my work. He said we'll start a business. So we rented a showroom in the Furniture Mart in LA, and the business was called I Encounter. And we had the display of our black and white. I did all black and white to start with, no color. Well, you know, color was at that period of time, it was, okay, there were 11 trays of chemistry. The last one was formaldehyde. It wasn't it was an hour to process the film to the tray. So black and white was a little bit more practical. And that's what Ansel Adams was doing. So I figured, well, that's the art form. Black and white is the art form, photography. So that's what I did. These were taken, actually, most of these were taken with a Mamiya Press 2¼ by 3¼ camera on Dandy Pan. You may have heard of Dandy Pan? It was an East German film. Then we said, okay, we're going to give up. We just got to give up on this color stuff. We got to start doing, we're going to give up on the black and white. So we decided to go to color, and color film then was not that good. So I figured I needed at least 5 by 7 to shoot color, because I was shooting, I do not shoot slides. I think slides are ugly. So the negative film has a more soft feeling to it. It's not, and also you don't have to be as good a photographer. You can be a couple stops off either way and still get a picture. So I bought the 5 by 7 Deerdorf and started doing color. So you can match the gold couches. This was in 1972. And the shag carpets, you know, the avocado and that sort of stuff. Now we did 2 things. We did, well, the first thing we did was Spencer Gift. Spencer Gift, they wanted, that's one reason about the 5 by 7. Their entry wall, they wanted these prints, 50-inch prints. And so we got that. We did the first experiment with 10 stores with all originals at lithographic prices to test market it. So they put them in all our stores, and then we started doing these smaller pictures, prints, and for gift shops. And we would ship all these prints inside these cubes. And these cubes were the shipping container for the product. And then you just take the product out and put it on the cubes. It was pretty interesting. And then we got into the clock business. And we were the largest clock manufacturer in the United States. Reason I know that, because we were buying most all the mechanisms in the world from Japan and Germany. It was a crazy. We'd ship out a 16-wheeler full every day. We sold the picture on the top. I know that one we sold 750,000 of those clocks. just that one design. Then I sold the business and we came to Florida. We came to Florida for the sailing. And this wasn't my boat. I didn't see anything here to photograph. It was because we had a sailboat. We bought the sailboat here. So I started doing kind of like a Jerry Uelsman thing in color. I saw Salvador Dali's museum in 1982. It just opened a museum in St. Petersburg. So I started doing, I kind of call it Dali-esque prints. Little sort of spacecraft, because I was in Star Trek. Then I kind of recovered from all that, because I got tired of photography, shipping it out, selling that many pictures, and not doing much photography, just having mostly in production. So in Florida, I said, oh, we could do the beaches. I think we should do the beaches in Florida. So I started photographing the beaches and doing the art shows. I was doing the art shows and it became very successful. And I was showing it with my out west work. In fact, the one in the center is Ohio. The one on the right is the Redwoods. And the other one on the left is Ohio. And then Florida on the very left. And then I finally discovered the inside of Florida by Tom Gaskin's place in Palmdale, Florida. It's called Fish It and Crick. And they had these signs. That's the next one. No, they have these signs on the street. It said, if your husband won't stop, he had a little gift shop. And I was getting bored. He said, there's a boardwalk in the back. So he says, you can go out on the boardwalk. And I went out there and said, wow, this is really something else. I didn't realize Florida was this interesting. But it was a boardwalk. I'm from California. I knew there's gators and snakes there. So a boardwalk sounded good. But it was a boardwalk I think it was about 14 inches wide, nailed to trees. But it got me out there. And it was really exciting. And then Oscar Thompson, a friend of mine, I was at a camera store in Fort Myers, and took me out to Big Cypress. And this is basically the Everglades. And I didn't realize the Everglades is basically limestone. Then in 1986, our son on the left there was killed by a truck driver. And I decided that I wanted to go back into black and white because the sales were great in color, but I didn't think it was telling the story. My wife was doing hand painted. This is a black and white photograph she took, and she would hand paint it with oils, and her sales were good at the art shows. And I took this one beach shot, converted it to black and white, and I said, I think this is what I want to do. So I took the 8x10 camera and started photographing Florida. And because I photographed what I wanted to photograph, not what I thought was going to sell. I mean, who would ever thought you could sell pictures of swamps? But once you understand the beauty of Florida, it's a lot more interesting, I think, in some respects than out west. There's more variety in Florida. Well, California has a lot, but it competes with California pretty much in a variety of things to photograph. The problem in Florida is you have to get out of your car. You can't, you got to get into it. And so my first art show I did, my sales were just about as much as the color or more. And I thought it was a freak, but I got awards, Mickey and Minnie. I sold prints. I think it was, I did about $7,000 on that show, which was a pretty, because normally people in black and white, these art shows were making $300 to $400. And everybody thought this was really a quirk. Then we decided that we needed to get a gallery. We needed to find a place where I was photographing and what was part of what I was doing. So we found this piece of property in Big Cypress, which is actually the center of the Everglades. And it was $85,000, 13 acres. And we built a gallery there. And it's an amazing, people from all over the world come to see this gallery. It's, and the photographs, you haven't seen anything until you see an 8-foot silver print. You haven't, it's hard to describe what an 8-foot silver print looks like, but it's pretty exciting. Now this is one thing that's fun. People come into the gallery and say, where do I go to photograph? I say the parking lot. This picture was taken in the parking lot. This was in the parking lot. In Florida, you have to be able to see. You have to be able to make order out of all this chaos. The backyard is even prettier. I mean, it's like a different world back there. Now this shot here, this one was a 6-minute exposure, and the camera is in about 4 feet of mud. And I got the camera down about a foot into it, and this had to be shot about 10 minutes before the sun came up over the horizon, so you didn't have any harsh light and no wind, because once that sun comes up, it makes wind. And this was a 6-minute exposure. And for some, when I would shoot it, I would go into the house and process the film, and there'd be 2 images on the film, and because the camera was moving during the exposure. So it took me 2 weeks to finally get a shot there that had 2 images in it, or 3. What I had to do is I had to actually float in the water, swim up to the camera, click it on, then float in the water and count to 6 minutes, then go up, swim back to the camera and turn the lens off. That's how I learned how to photograph. Now I know how to photograph in mud. You have to float in the water. And this was a shot that we, almost every year, except until after my stroke, New Year's Day, Wick and I, my wife and I would go on a swamp walk and take our kids and any employees we had, and we'd go on a swamp walk. And I found this spot that I wanted to photograph. This is in 2000, January 1st, 2000. And it was a nice spot, but it wasn't right. So after 9 years, what I would do, this is in August. That was in January. In August, everything is green, the water's high, but it's hot. So I would sit, I get halfway there and you just take the camera hanging up on a tree and sit in the water and cool off. And the depth of field in this thing was just horrendous, but I really enjoyed that shot. It tells me that's a swamp. And this area here, normally I like to photograph when the water's up because it's the safest. When it's dry like this, it's actually the most dangerous time to photograph the Everglades because everything is protecting their water holes. This water moccasins, the gators, everything is it's mating season. You know, it's just a bad time. But I wanted to photograph this to see the bottom of the trees. Now, if you can see over there to the right, my camera gear is on the ground. That's the first time, I think the only time I've been able to put my camera gear down on the ground. And if you can look at the back of the middle there, you see a 10-foot gator laying there. The most dangerous part of the Everglades is lightning.
Where was that gator? Can you go back?
right in the very back, between those. See, well, it's kind of like off to the right of the back.
The second puddle?
Yeah, it's behind the second puddle. I wish I could make it bigger, but he was in the shade, so you can't see him too good. But in a big print, you can see him pretty good. But the lightning is really the tricky part about the Everglades. That's the scary part. This was really weird. This was taken in the morning, and normally we don't have these great clouds in the morning. And I've always wanted to photograph these trees, but the light was never right. And we were going to Miami, and I happened to have my camera. So I said, oh, I stopped the car and I jumped out and took the pictures of these trees. And it's, I think it's one of my better pictures. It's really, really a great picture because it has the storm, the light, everything. It's grass. It's just magnificent picture.
Excuse me, Clyde, could we ask about that shot?
Sure.
One before you look like you're fairly close to the tree.
Yep.
So how do you get, I know you tilt the front of your camera, but how do you get such a big tree so close?
You do not tilt the camera.
No, the front, your lens, you tilt the lens, right?
No, you never tilt the lens. Something that's vertical. If you tilt the lens, the top and bottom will be out of focus. You raise the lens up.
Right. Okay.
You raise it up. And the lens was a 72 millimeter on 5x7. That's a 120 degree angle of view. But that's it. So that's the actual picture. That's where I was when I took that picture. And that's how you separate in the Everglades is wide angle, because it gives you the foreground is higher, everything is smaller. Like all those trees in the very background are bigger than the ones in the foreground. So it's the wide angle lens gives you that dimensions in a flat field. So you got to learn how to create dimensions. And I've been shooting with a wide angle lens since 1962. I got the first 20 millimeter Flectagon in the country in 1962, and it was the first one ever built was in 61. It was the first retro focus wide angle lens that was ever built. Everybody shoots with your 16 to 35s and all that. People don't understand those are retro focus lenses. They're not like the view camera is simple lenses. Those lenses, it's a kind of a miracle. If you look at them, they're like pretty long lenses. So what they're doing is they're making that image in front of the lens and then projecting it back to the film plane with kind of like in telephoto. It's hard to explain, but it's a magic with the optics that they figured that out. Of course, it was a German that figured it out.
So your general technique with your wide angle lenses is to get up close?
Yep.
And who's photographing you? Several people want to know. Is that Nikki?
Oh yeah, she could do a book on photographs that she does of me. We've got thousands of pictures. I mean, how many photographers have a person photographing them all the time? You know, how many people are that lucky to have a photographer? Now I'm carrying the 12x20. And it helps to have a canoe with this big giant camera. The plastic box there has lenses, and these cardboard boxes have the film holders. It's like I say, it's 120 pounds for the gear. The camera without lenses or anything is 45 pounds. That's the picture. So the canoe is really an important tool to get around. I wanted to photograph this place in low water, and most of the way to it, I had to walk because there wasn't enough water for this canoe. I'm down about every step about a foot in mud. To go 3/4 of a mile, and back it took us 7 hours. But I wanted to get the feeling of the roots going down to the ground to get the real feeling of the mangroves. Here's that crazy camera again. Now you can see I'm the anchor. So I kept all the lenses, the film holders, everything on the boat. I need something, I'd pull it over. And so I had, it was like my camera bag. And now when you are in the water and you get where you should be in the water, you feel like you're there. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do with my images, is give people the concept of feeling like they're there. Because a lot of people don't want to go in a swamp. And I think that's kind of crazy because swamp is gorgeous. Now, from California, would you photograph a sand spit? This is a sand spit. Look at the clouds. Look at the clouds. Wow, what exciting clouds. And most everything I do, I'm in the water because that's what Florida is all about. It's water. Again, you feel like you're almost in a canoe going down that rig. You see that in an 8-foot print, you feel like you're there. Here I am in the water again. This is downtown Fort Lauderdale. You know, you have property like this in Fort Lauderdale city limits. Oh, this is when I started out, one of the reasons I went to black and white, I was trying to work on convincing people that the Everglades was important, and I kind of got that project going now, working on the springs of Florida and trying to get people, because people in southern Florida don't think about the springs, and people in northern Florida with the springs don't think about the Everglades. So you have to be able to communicate with both. Now this is a cypress tree, probably 1,000 years old or more, 53 feet in circumference. But without people, just a tree. Oh, now this is my experience trying to photograph in this area when the water came up. You got to be persistent.
Irma, easy now. Clyde, no. Get back in the boat. You get the movie?
I don't know. I think it was mostly the bottom of the boat. Yeah, but if you jump out, the whole, no, don't jump out.
Oh, this is so cold. They had already lost their ladder. And that water is 70 degrees, which before that's cold. Up north, it's probably warm.
Let's see. Oh, it's kind of soft.
I'm determined to get out and photograph it.
Okay, you got it, Clever? I'm trying to. Let's see if I can't square the boat up. Okay. That's wake up time. Wake up time.
That's wake up time.
Yeah, water's nice and cold. Different perspective from here. Yeah, it is. It's kind of cool, isn't it?
So now you just kind of walk around looking for compositions.
It's kind of cool.
It's a pretty magic place. course, there's alligators in there. And fish. And snakes. So you find a composition, go grab your camera and get it put down where you want. And there's the photograph. It's worth it.
Staggering.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. I mean, it's a gorgeous, I mean, that is primeval stuff. That's one of the few places on the East Coast that hasn't been touched in 1,000 years. I did a museum show at the Ringling Museum. On the left, there's Ansel Adams show, and then my show. And the director of Ringling moved up to Williamsburg, the college up there, and asked me to do a show there on celebrating the 400th anniversary of Jamestown. So I decided to go, because he wanted me to do something in Jamestown. I said, no, I want to do America, because it was the start of America. So I thought doing America. So I took off doing photographies of places around the United States that I hadn't shot. Arcadia was one of those places. This was a scary shot. I'm right on the edge of a cliff. It was pretty spooky because there was nobody with me. I had to lean over and adjust the lens, and it was pretty scary. 11 by 14. Now, this is a place that you guys should go to, which is not far from you. This is Delaware Gap in Pennsylvania. I don't know if you guys have been to Delaware Gap. There's 100 waterfalls in 35 miles. I mean, there's just all kinds of things there to photograph. It's just a gorgeous place. But most people just drive through it. So they don't understand, they don't really see it. You know, they just zip through it. Oh, Yosemite. That was one. I never could photograph Yosemite in color. I never figured out how to do it. The main reason is because when I was photographing that Yosemite back in the 60s and 70s, the kids were in school. The only time I could go there was the summertime. And you do not want to photograph Yosemite in the summertime. It's boring. April, May is the best time for Yosemite. Oh, and also actually in the winter with January, February with the snow, it's pretty neat too. But I think April's, I love April there. I think it's the best month for Yosemite. You think photographers have found it? I think photographers have found it. So I shot this shot every day morning when I would cut. We stayed up on the ups of the top of Yosemite, and we would come down over this viewpoint, and I'd photograph it in the morning, and on the way back I photograph at night. And I figured that I found a better spot. It was down the road about 100 yards maybe. And these bushes were in the way. So I went downtown and bought a ladder. We'd flown in and rented a car, but I bought a ladder so I could get up over the bushes. And I think this is a much better angle with the trees and the whole thing just gives it like a womb. The hike is a much better feeling of that valley than the other shot. This was fun. This is, you got to shoot, you know, half dome. And I'm there waiting for the light. And I'm there, and photographers would come back and we would talk. They would go photograph, and they would come back, and I'm still there. They would say, "Why don't you just shoot the picture?" I said, "No, the light's got to be right." I think I was there for 2.5 hours And finally, the light was right. I mean, people don't understand, the light has to be right. You can do a lot in Photoshop, but basically if the light's not right, it's not right. This was a
Excuse me, Clyde. Question on that shot and the last couple from Yosemite.
Sure.
What filters are you using for a shot like this? Is this a?
This was a red.
Yeah.
And this one was an orange.
So how do you remember that? How do you know? You always use a red or an orange for these particular types?
I even remember the f-stop. No, I remember all that stuff. That's just part of my, it's important to me. So when things are important, you remember them. The clouds are not red clouds. They're orange. I mean, I can tell what an orange filter does to the clouds and the red filter. See how the sky went black?
Yes.
And the trees went dark. A red filter makes the trees go dark. The greens go dark.
So are you showing us digital scans of your prints? What are you showing us?
Correct. Yeah, in fact, I learned how to work on Photoshop probably in 1999. I started learning Photoshop because I would scan my negatives, and we self-published all of our books. So I would scan them and not have the printer do it. So I would scan the images, and I had to figure out how to make a picture come out of my digital darkroom look the same as the wet darkroom. So that's why my digital pictures look pretty much like my other ones, because I know how to. I learned a technique that's just like the darkroom. It's very simple. I can do probably in 5 minutes what it takes somebody else probably a day to do, because they're complicated. But this was a fun shot. I was up here and the fog was in. When I first came there was 1,000 people up there. Then every half hour, the crowd would get smaller and smaller. By this point, there was 4 other photographers there with me. And finally, in fact, one of them had phase one had to do with Hasselblad digital camera. They were pretty serious, but they gave up and they left. So as soon as they left, whoops, there it opened up. I photographed it and it closed up again. Sometimes you got to be patient and persistent. And there's that silly camera again. 4 tripods. 1 for the center, 1 for each edge of the film, and 1 for the lens. Isn't that fun? Gosh. Death Valley is really a fun place to shoot. And again, March, the 1st of April is a good time. Most of March is really better, kind of. Well, it just depends. But it gets a little hot after April. It gets a little warm. But it's a pretty fun place to photograph. Oh, this Badlands. If you've ever been to Badlands, this is our little cabin we stayed in. And the picture we took was right across the street. That's actually in front of the visitor center. And we've been getting up every morning. We've been going to bed at 10:30, 11 o'clock every night, and getting up at 4:30 in the morning. Well, we had when we got back from a shoot, we had to unload the film, clean the film holders, reload it, and so we were really getting tired. And I woke up at 4:30, looked out the door, and it was black. So I went and laid back down for about 5 minutes, and I said, Nikki, well, we've been doing this every morning. The morning we don't get up, it's going to happen. So we went out there, and this is like right across the street. This is probably I don't know, 300, 200 feet from the cabin. And that morning, the light was just, I mean, that's a perfect black and white photograph. Now, the first picture you saw in the whole presentation was in the Grand Canyon. That was in 1952. And this is the first time I had been back there. This was 2006. And it was pretty exciting to go back there. And for the first time in what, 50 or 60 years, and shoot the Grand Canyon. Now, the reason I put this slide in, that's how I compose my picture. I say, okay, that's my angle, and I put the tripod where I'm standing. I focus the camera and take a picture. Everything I do is point and shoot. I do not compose anything on the ground glass or in the camera. I point the camera where I want you to see, and all I do is focus. Level the camera and focus it. That's how I take pictures. Everything I do is point and shoot. Now this is when I'm going to digital. The camera on these are both Sony backs. It's a Sony A7R. This is artist, Cambo artist on the left, and the regular Sony on the right. That's a Mamiya RZ lens, and this is a Canon lens. Basic lenses I use on any camera that I get in digital is the Canon tilt and shifts. I have the 17, the 24, the 50, the 90, and the 135. Those are my basic lenses for any camera. If I can't put them on a camera, I don't buy the camera. Now this is with a shift lens. You take a shot to the left and a shot to the right, and you put them together in Photoshop, and it makes a beautiful pan. Now this is something you can't do with a view camera. I mean, how can you do that with a view camera? Depth of field, you could never even think of doing it with a depth of field. It's pretty exciting. The digital camera is really opened the world of photography up for me. It's expanded it. This is the Sony with the 17 with the camera vertical and 3 photographs to the left. You shoot one to the right, a middle, and a left. They put them together, so you get a regular proportion picture. But the thing that's nice about this is the camera is so small you can run. This is one of my favorite shots. This is the Smoky Mountains, little Pigeon Creek. And I couldn't even physically get there with a view camera where I was at that.
Any alligators there?
No, no, no.
So the question is, what's the closest call you've had with alligators in your swamps?
Really, the only coast I had was where that 6-minute exposure was. I was back in the back pond there with a fellow from the Naples newspaper. They were doing a story on me, and I was photographing. And I had the canoe. Cameron and I were both in the water. Now this is Cameron was the photographer. He had never been in the swamp before. He was from Minnesota, so he was a little nervous. And so I turned around. I got the picture taken. I turned around to go. There's a couple trees there I was going to use to steady myself to get in the boat. And as I turned around, this 12-foot alligator was about maybe 5 feet from me, looking at me. And I was barefoot, and I was in about a foot of water. With a gator, you got 2 choices: fight or flee, and you can't flee a gator. So I took a paddle out of the canoe and bopped him on the nose, and he took off. But when he did that, he got pissed off, I guess, because he shot water up in the air about 10 feet. And I looked around, and Cameron somehow had gotten into the canoe. I don't know how he did it, because we were in like 3 feet of water. He was, I guess, pretty scared. Oh, here's my walker. This is after my stroke. Well, this is my first walker because I rent this one. The bearings of this are shot in this one. I got in some salt water with it. It was all over. But it's really a good tool. This is Florida. There's the shot. Finally the water, the rain stopped, and I got my shot.
Clyde, on the Pigeon Creek
Yeah,
shot, what do you remember what your exposure approximately was? How long was it?
probably a 30th of a second. It was a 17 millimeter Canon with the shift to left and shift to the right.
When you say shift, do you mean you're shifting the lens, or you're taking
Yeah,
three
no.
shots,
No, it's the lens shifts.
right?
The camera does not move. The lens shifts to the left and you shift it to the right. I wish
I understand.
okay. It's basically just like a view camera.
Right. As opposed to taking three separate shifting of the cameras, like a pano, you're shifting the lens and taking three images.
Right. So that way it's a very, I call it correct perspective.
Tilt and shift the lens.
I know, I told them it's tilt and
Oh,
shift
you
lens.
did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Nobody's ever used one.
Oh,
They've never seen one.
okay. Check it out. They're great.
I've seen it, but I've never used it.
Well, I've got a new for my Sony. I haven't checked the other lenses, but my 24 tilt and shift Canon, it'll cover my shift left right. It covers it all. And then also I found another adapter that will actually shift the lens other directions, so I can take 2 shots, then move the lens down, take 2 more shots, so I get a really get more foreground. I'm inventing all the time, trying to get. I'm a wide angle freak. Now this one here I've got. This camera is the GFX, and the viewfinder on that thing. See how that thing's sticking up? The thing it twirls around, goes down, goes up. You can put it anywhere you want. It's really a fantastic camera. And this is a 50 megabyte. It's a 50 GFX 50S, and I bought the GFX 100. This takes better pictures than the 100 because the pixels are bigger. That's my new walker. The other walker got destroyed with all the salt water. This is one of my favorite trees. In fact, I just photographed it 2 weeks ago again. And then now the water's up. See the difference? The whole lake kind of comes in. Florida really changes all the time. It's really kind of neat. This is Mayaca State Park, which is about a 20-minute drive from our house here in Venice, Florida. It's a fantastic park. Well, this was taken with, I used to have a Canon 5DS, which was a 50 megabyte, but it was okay. But the what do you call it? The tonal range wasn't that good. Now this was just, I took this just after my stroke, and our daughter wanted to do a calendar with the moons because this was going to be the 50th anniversary of landing on the moon. And I had to get up on this ladder, and Nikki had to kind of push me, keep me from falling, and she put this on the internet, on Facebook, and my doctor saw it and just about went berserk because I was taking Xarelto, blood thinner. If I had fallen, I probably could have been all over. That's the shot I got. And this is our Venice gallery, and the Venice gallery is where we first of all just had the darkroom, and then we decided to actually get some extra office space, so we created a gallery. This is our darkroom. The darkroom is 2,000 square feet. I think we have 8 enlargers. That's the one on the very far left is 11 by 14. The rest of those are 8 by 10s. My daughter and son-in-law joined us in 2000. This is a print behind us that we did for the Fort Lauderdale airport. It was 6 foot by 16 feet. Now this gives you an idea of what a straight negative looks like and what after I play the darkroom. So a lot of people send a picture out to have printed, and if you don't know what you're doing, you might have something great there, but if you don't know how to manipulate it, you may not have anything. This is our big enlarger. It's a 12 by 20, 12 by 20 digs. And I can do a 9-foot print. This is our trays. Each tray is actually a sink. We have a drain in each tray. So you have a developer, a stop, 2 fixes. This tray, the tray there is a for selenium and hypoclear, and this is a wash tray. And this is our drying technique. This is our gallery in the big Cypress or Everglades National Park. The gallery's up in front, the house in the very back, and then we have actually the house now is a vacation rental, and we have a bungalow in the middle there is a vacation rental. Then we have 3 spots for our people that volunteer to work for us. But it's not a volunteer. They get paid. It's not, they get paid. It's not public. So, and of course we have a lot of interesting people. This was President Carter came, and he had wanted to meet me, and he was down in the, he wanted to bring his family to the Everglades one year. So every year between Christmas and New Year's, they usually take the family out for a guy. So they're all together on a trip. And I was showing him around the darkroom, and he had just gotten the new Canon 16 megabyte, which was the biggest one at that particular time. And I was explaining to him the 8 by 10 and the 6-minute exposures and difficulty, and he asked me, well, why don't you use a digital camera? Isn't it difficult? I asked him, well, why did you run for president? And he cracked up. He knew exactly what I meant. Then we took him for a swamp walk, and you could tell they just had a ball. He sends me Christmas cards every year. If you're getting postage from him, it just says President Carter's the stamp. There's no stamp. This is the house. We have solar panels, 11,000 watts of solar, 3 Tesla batteries. So electricity goes out, but the house still can function. And usually we take people on swamp walks that come to the house to visit. This is my idea of using bird photography from the porch. This is an 800, And it also has a converter. It makes a 1200 millimeter with a 6x7 film camera. So all I do is open that window up and take a picture in air conditioning. Isn't that the way to do animal photography, is in air conditioning? So we get a lot of neat shots just from the porch. And then we helped the park celebrate the 100th anniversary. And they had just taken the group out. We did this whole show in the Miami airport for the park. It was five pictures, 5 foot by 8 foot of the 5 different parks in Florida. This is one of my favorite pictures. It was taken last year. I was with my best friend, Oscar. He passed away in December. This was in September of a heart attack. And is very, very means a lot to me. The next picture is one that we have to all start thinking about these days. If we want to inhabit this earth, is we got to do something to keep the earth going, and we're not doing good. In fact, we, as a society, as a civilization, we're failing. We're really stupid people. It's beautiful. I mean, how can you screw up a world that's so beautiful and purposely screw it up? Maybe don't understand what we're doing, but like Nick and I have a 900 square foot house here in Venice. It's completely run with solar, and the solar runs the house and runs our electric car. And at the end of the year, we get $100 back from FP&L. So, and with the solar in the gallery, we're trying to be kind of carbon neutral. And unfortunately, the other thing we need to do is plant more trees. Stop growing cattle, pigs, and grow more trees. I think that would help. Okay, that's it. You want any questions now?
Yes, I do, Clyde. That was pretty spectacular.
Should I do?
Staggering images. I do have a couple questions here in the chat room regarding your processing. Do you any longer do your own darkroom work?
We do all of our own work, whether it's digital or wet darkroom. We do everything ourselves.
Are you yourself doing it in the darkroom?
I'm there at this point in time with my handicap. I'm working with Neil. Neil, our son-in-law, is doing the printing now, and I've over the last 20 years, taught him how to print.
And one question was, do you take outside photographers' work to print?
No, we don't have enough time to do our own stuff. Our business is actually better during this thing than it was before last year. I don't know why, but we just got our we did a new Everglades book. Just got it in about a week and a half ago, and I think we've sold probably about 1,000 books already.
Wow.
in 1 week. Just having, so yeah, and we got orders for, yeah, it's an amazing, because we're doing things that are right. We're doing things that are for society. We're not just doing to make money. If that makes any sense.
So I have a question. Why do you prefer silver gelatin darkroom prints instead of archival inkjets? And do you do any selenium toning for your silver prints for stability?
Okay. Every silver print is selenium toned, every one. Well, it's basically the concept is if we shoot it with film, we do it in silver. If we shoot it in digital, we do it in digital. Digital, everybody says it's archival. Can I say a word? That's a bunch of bull. There is no such thing as an archival print. I put one out in the sun for 2 years and it was about gone. You put a silver print out in 2 years in the sun, nothing happens. No, they're not archival. But we are doing platinum palladium prints now. That's our newest thing. We're doing some platinum palladium, which is a whole different look than silver. That's pretty neat. That's supposed to be the most archival system of metals.
From a visualization point of view, do you think the silver gelatin is the best, or your preference?
Well, yeah, it's if you're really a connoisseur of black and white prints, you'll know if it's silver or if it's digital. And I do really good digital prints. I mean, we have a Epson 64-inch printer with image print. Now with image print, you can control. See, all our silver prints it's called a variable contrast paper. It has a blue emulsion and a green emulsion for light. The green is the low contrast and the blue is a high contrast. And each one of those is different color. People don't realize there's two different colors in that print. So with image print, you can actually control the shadow color and the highlight color. So you really visually, it's hard to tell the difference because I've spent so much time making it look like a silver print. But it doesn't have as much depth as a silver print. And we use the Hahnemühle art paper. It's a gloss, it's a Beretta, Hahnemühle Beretta gloss paper, which is a really nice paper. And it's cotton. So, you know, the paper's probably archival, but I don't think the inks are, they say it's archival, but I don't believe them. I mean, I've just seen the colors fade.
Can you talk about what, with your digital camera, are you using filters?
On the monochrome. On the monochrome, obviously I'm using yellow, orange, and red, and green. And on the other cameras, other ones, I don't use any filters. I don't even use the polarizer because in black and white, you like the glare. If you use a filter, polarizer, it kind of makes the picture flat.
Clyde, one of our members, Ginny Lodge, said that she was part of a show that you were in, the Prairie Village Art of Photography in Kansas.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Neat.
So you guys
I've done a lot of shows all over the country. It's, you know, I like the one in Ohio right now. It's really a nice show. Actually, also the one in Ohio has the 12 by 20 camera in the show also. But the idea is of these shows is to get the word out about the environment. It's not, these shows don't make any money. That's for sure. They cost money. We have, you know, but yeah, so we're trying to get people to get tuned in before it's too late. Well, I think people love the scientists say it's too late now anyhow. So one thing we got going for is Elon Musk. He is, if anybody solves our problem, it'll be Elon Musk. You know him? I guess everybody knows him.
yes, the
Tesla.
Rocket Man.
Yeah, rocket, Tesla,
Yes.
solar panels, tunnels under the ground. He's working on connecting your brain with the computer. He's, I think he's Martian.
In reference to the environment, how do you dispose your chemicals? It was asked.
The only bad part is the silver in the fix, and we have a silver reclaiming thing, and the rest of it go down the sewer. We don't use enough of it to hurt anybody. But the black and white chemicals are not like the color chemicals. That bleach, the color chemicals is really bad.
If folks want to unmute themselves, they're welcome to do that if they want to say anything. We have tons of comments, Clyde, about how spectacular your images were and or are, and what a great presentation you did. Really very, very good comments.
I have a question.
Yes.
How many of you guys are photographing Pennsylvania and trying to help give those images to groups that need them? Got one person?
I don't know. I don't see anybody.
Oh, one guy.
Well, Phil did Grish Mill all the time, and wasn't Bill in on that? And that's a local historic area, and they would give the prints to them to use for their
Yeah, but see,
promotions.
the camera is such a great tool for communicating. And camera clubs should be really involved in saving the environment. Does anybody like to go out in nature and photograph? If you don't help the environment out, you're not gonna have anything to photograph.
I think a number of us have had photographs in Pennsylvania Magazine, and a lot of that is about the natural beauty of Pennsylvania.
Sierra Club, Audubon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Audubon.
Do you have any DEP, Department of Environmental Protection? Do you work with those people? I mean, it's government too.
Yeah, I've donated a few pictures to DCNR, which is the Parks Department for Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta do a lot, not just a few.
Yeah, there's a lot of greenways areas that they're trying to save the green space out here. We live in the big woods. That's what it's called. People don't realize how important it is.
Well, I've heard that from superintendent there at Delaware Gap, that Pennsylvania is maybe the only state that's carbon neutral because you have so many trees.
Yep, Penn's Woods.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I recognize that waterfall you're standing on at the water gap.
that was what was it? Kitchen. It's really neat. It goes. They have stairs going down it.
Yep, yep.
It's really neat.
We have that whole area mapped, and we do what's called orienteering. So we go into these places that nobody ever sees, and that's the shame. People don't know what's off the highways up there.
Oh yeah, there's a mill back there in the woods back there. It's all kinds of things in the woods there.
The beaver ponds are out there. It's the biggest black bears are in that woods right there.
Well, also you got turkeys.
Lots of turkeys. That's our state bird.
I got charged by one.
Yeah.
He turned about 4 feet away. He was charging me. I messed him up with his girlfriend, I guess.
Yeah.
He got pissed off at me. He was kicking dust up, coming after me.
Yeah, they can do some damage, but that's a gorgeous place up there. And you're right. Nobody gets off the beaten trails, so they have no idea what's up there, and it is gorgeous. Yeah.
Clyde, do you know any other photographers who are primarily doing film work these days?
Well, one of my assistants, Paul, is, of course, there's a typical John Sexton, David Brookover. David Brookover, he's in Wyoming. He has a gallery in what's the town there in Jackson Hole. There's not many of them because everybody wants color, and color is just so boring. Gosh, it's boring.
I'm starting to agree with you after seeing your work.
I don't think it's ever going to be considered art. I don't care. It's just a duplication of nature. Black and white is an interpretation.
I like that.
I don't think it's ever going to be. And right now, if you want to go into doing color and you want to try to sell, everybody in their world's trying to sell color. They got their own little printer machines, and It used to be color. You had to have a dark room, and you had all this. I mean, it was pretty extensive to do color work if you wanted to be before. But now you can get your little printer. I mean, get a 24-inch printer, you do big prints. But I just, and there's, but again, like when I did a project, when I was first starting to get working on the Everglades project, I was doing an art show it was 1989 in West Palm Beach. And the director of the Water Management District came into the booth, and there was a big, because the federal government was suing Florida over us screwing up the Everglades. There was a lot of fighting going on. And they were building a new building, and big building. And he asked me, he said, you know, we got to have these photographs in our building, show people what the Everglades is all about. And he says, oh, you know, I want 40 by 60s. I want big ones, you know. And I said, well, I said to myself, boy, this is going to be a nice sale. And he said, I need about 30, 35. And at that time, I think they were a frame. They were selling for $1,000. So that's, you know, $35,000, $40,000. That's good. But he says, we can't pay you for them. So I thought about it for about a month, and I called him up and I said, okay, I'll be over there in a couple of months for the pictures. And I gave him, I think it was 35 large framed prints free. It was a lot of money. You know how much it cost to frame a 40 by 60 with matte glass? You know, it's not cheap. They were all originals. They weren't digital prints. They were all silver prints. So that's kind of how I got started to really understand the importance of working with them. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
I have the headset on because that's the way I can listen good.
Okay. Okay.
I just muted that.
Okay.
We have a comment from someone's, Mike, thanking you for all the work you've done for the environment and the inspiration that you've given us. Clyde, do you ever, have you done any kind of webinars or discussions about your workflow in the darkroom and your digital prep, that type of thing?
My granddaughter wants to work on, our granddaughter's working with us now, and she graduated from the Art Institute in San Francisco in photography. So we're going to start doing, like she wants to do on my cameras, my growth, the cameras, what different stages and different how I do things. And yeah, basically doing the history, doing, I actually have a DVD on how to do Photoshop.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that on your website?
Probably not. You just have to know about it. It's a little out of date, kind of. I did it quite a long time ago, but the basic skills are there. Because I do all my burning and dodging with gradients. I don't use the burn and dodge tool for anything. That's a no-no. I only use, let's see, I use the gradients. I use an eraser. I use a history brush. I think that's it. That's my tools. The eraser is very powerful. People don't use the eraser enough. I figured that out. That's in the technique. There's if you have a color picture that's kind of flat. I'll give you a little. This is a really fun people for color people. If you have a kind of, you want some more contrast, and then if you go into Photoshop and you raise the blacks up, or if you play around with the histogram or the curves, it's going to change the character of the picture. It's going to change the color of the picture. So how do you get more snap in it without doing that? Well, you go in and make another layer, and you multiply it. This is in color. Then you desaturate that layer. Then you go into your histogram and you pull your highlights all the way over to the left until you just get this real high contrast. And then you go down and then you make it a little bit transparent, and you just lay that on top, and it gives you the contrast. And then if you don't want contrast in an area, you use your eraser and get rid of it. So it's a local high contrast. Anybody understand that?
Yeah, I got that. Tell me about the, is that one of the blend modes in Photoshop with using a transparent layer?
Oh, no, I just go into the histogram on the very bottom of the black and just pull the black over a little bit. So it makes it, instead of 100% black, it make it, 70%.
And you said you use the multiply, that blend mode of multiply.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's what it was.
Well, the other one is if you want to dodge, you use a screen.
Mm-hmm.
So when you use a gradient, a circle gradient, or whatever gradient you want to use, you can then in that gradient, you can then play with the contrast. You can play in the histogram in that gradient.
Mm-hmm. So
if you're doing an eyeball or something, you can play with the contrast of the eyeball with the gradient.
Mm-hmm.
It's so simple, and but the thing is, it looks natural. If you do too much burning and dodging with those burning and dodging tools, it never comes out right. Never comes out look like it's natural. Never comes out natural.
So I have one last question for you. Did you ever drop a camera into the swamp?
Well, when I was doing that shot in the backyard with a 6-minute exposure, I would leave it often in the water for 2 weeks. And the camera was only like 8 inches out of the water, the tripod. And one morning it didn't look right. And what had happened, it turned over sideways on the tripod and got the bellows wet. But, it's just wood, and just took some water and squirted it on it. It's fine. No, I haven't dropped the camera. I mean, maybe the reason I don't drop them is because I don't care. If you're really paranoid about your camera, you don't take it. I mean, every time a person becomes paranoid out in the water, they usually drop it. But if you don't care, you probably won't drop it. And that's all part of being a professional photographer. Your equipment is just a tool. Always get new ones. And it's really interesting. I was looking at the information on this new Sony A7R4, and I don't think it's as good as the A7R2. Too many pixels. You get a lot of noise when you can start getting up in the higher ASAs. I don't think it's as good as the old one. Got too many pixels. The best one I have is the Sony A7S. It's got 12 pixels, 12 megabytes. That one is really good for small prints. It's 400,000 ASA. And so, pixels are good, but you got to have big pixels. And that's why the 50S, 50 megabytes, but the sensor is 80% big. I think it's like 80% bigger than a 35. So you've got a lot less pixels per square inch. Makes any sense? Because I tried the 100 megabyte and it just didn't look as good as the 50. It costs more too. And I went back. I was going to buy a new Sony A7R4. And I started researching it. I said, no, I'll stick with my A7R2. I did a whole show for the Dolly Museum. they sent me over to Spain to photograph where Salvador Dali lived. I did a show for the museum. It was 5,000 square feet museum. And most of the pictures in the show were up probably 4 foot by 7 foot, 4 foot by 8 foot. This is all with the Sony A7R II. And it was a beautiful show. So, you know, because I've learned how to, the first thing people don't understand when they're converting color to black and white, you first have to work on the color. You don't go and just convert it. You have to work on the color part first. That's where most people get screwed up because they don't understand. You have to get, like for instance, if you have some areas that you want really highlight white and say they're kind of yellowish, well, you go in and make the yellow area more yellow. And when you convert it, it'll make it whiter. So it's just like when the old black and white films, when they photographed a person with a red filter, they had to make blue lipstick. If you use red lipstick, their lips would be white.
Wow.
So, you know, it's understanding light. That's one of the main keys, understanding light. And a lot of photographers, Ansel Adams had his, what do they call it, the zone system. The zone system was designed so you don't have to wait around for the right light. That was his thing. I don't do anything with, when I shot film, my processing was standard. I didn't do anything funny. I just waited for the right light.
Your Sony images that were in Spain, were they all black and white?
Oh, well, they were shot in color, of course.
Yes, but were they the prints black and white?
Oh yeah, they're all black and white. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. Anybody else have any other points or comments, questions for Clyde? If not, Clyde, this was absolutely a pleasure. Quite a night to have you talk with us. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, very good.
And based on the chat box here, people just thought you were just fabulous.
Well, you know, you just have to, well, you know, when doors open for you, you should just follow the doors. Go into the door. A lot of people, the door will open and say, well, no, maybe I can't do that. I don't know about, you know, when we did our first business in LA there, we ended up, Nikki and I and the 2 kids living in a tent trailer. We had a little space for a darkroom, but we lived in the tent trailer in the state parks. Lost our house, everything. But, you know, it's, you know, but I've always had this thing about wanting to do my photography. I'm researching it every day. And I got this staph infection. I got really pissed off because I was planning on going shooting this week.
Well, you're a national treasure, actually.
Getting old's no fun.
Well, stay safe with this COVID thing.
Yeah, well, my granddaughter had it. She's over it, and now my daughter has it. She had it because she had appendix. She was having a problem with her appendix, had appendicitis. Went in the hospital, and they stuck her in with all these COVID, these old patients that had all this stuff, and she got it in the hospital.
Wow.
So if you go in the hospital, have to go to the hospital, have the doctor say to the admittance, put them in a room, do not put them in the lobby. There's a lot of hospitals, they just put everybody, you know, in the emergency, and you're going to get it in the hospital. I guarantee you.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
We'll let you go, Clyde.
Okay. It was fun. It was a fun project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
There they are. Da-da-da.
I have to get one of those hats.
In Florida, you need it for the sun.
Yeah, I need it everywhere,
Well,
even in Pennsylvania.
my back of my head's getting a little bald.
I'm way past that.
I can see that, yeah. But
Thank you.
this one has ventilation in it, though. You know, it's straw hat, so it has some ventilation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for the environmental note also. I appreciate it.
I tell you, it's just people don't realize how desperate we are. I mean, I was listening to NPR, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday. This scientist says he thinks it's too late. It's too late because people don't care.
Wish they wouldn't put that message out, then everybody will give up.
Well, it's why they've already given up.
Yep.
I mean, we knew about this. Okay, I was at the Corps of Engineers are the people in charge of the restoration of the Everglades. In 1996, the colonel asked me and my wife to come up to the main office in Jacksonville, and they gave us presentations over 2 days. 110 people gave us presentations. And there was one guy that was designing walls around the cities because they already have determined that we're going to have all the cities in Florida are going to be flooded. And the Corps of Engineers can't do anything politically. All they can do is build stuff.
Yep.
Their solution is build walls around the cities. There's actually guys out there designing these walls today. I don't think it's going to work because they have to build an awful tall wall.
Yeah. Yeah, hurricanes go over walls too.
Well, hurricanes are no big deal. They're really no big deal. I've been out how many hurricanes, and in Florida, we build our houses to withstand them. Up in Louisiana and stuff, they don't have any building codes.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, so yeah, we don't have that problem here. Our house is built it's built.
It's built, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an idea. Well, you have to get insurance. And our hurricane insurance for our house is $400 a year.
Wow.
That's it.
Yeah, typically they're 4,000 or 5,000.
Yeah.
But if you have engineering drawings and they can prove that it's built correctly, it's a whole different story.
Wow.
You know, and we're on the water. We're on the water. We're a mile from the ocean.
Are you in Venice now?
Yeah. We actually we're 1.3 miles from the gallery we live. So it takes about 5 minutes to get to the gallery. And if I ride my bicycle over there, it takes about 15 minutes to get to the gallery. It's a nice little town. It's a surprising, it's still an old Florida town. Now in the town part. But you get out the outskirts there, you know, there's tracks. But the town, it looks like the 30s and 40s down in town.
Mm-hmm.
I think the rent's different though.
I have to just add something. If you guys are ever coming to Florida, open up Clyde's website and see when his open house is for his darkroom, because we give tours twice a year.
I would love to see it.
And it is, we have amazing enlargers. That great big one is really something. And so plan your vacation or your trip when one of those is going on. They don't cost anything. You can just come. Okay?
Fantastic. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Hey, Clyde, you have a very nice rookery there in Venice.
Yeah, it is. But unfortunately it's not, it's not mangroves. It's an invasive species. The plants there. It's what do you call it? Stuff. Anyhow, it's not a good plant, but it's fun. You get close enough photographs of the birds, you know. but I have a better spot in the Everglades. I sit in the porch photograph. It's amazing what happens on that porch. It's like an IMAX of the Everglades. Pretty neat. Okay, well, I'm going to leave and get, it's 9 o'clock, 9:13. Okay. I think we did more than an hour, didn't we?
You sure did. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.